Hi friends! Today we're going to be talking a little bit about human design and self-care strategies that I use for maintaining a healthy energy body, maintaining a healthy chakra system. These are personal exercises that I do, that I've experimented with, that help me build relationship with my body, with my energy body, with my energetic system, with my energy centers, to find deeper connection and well-being with my system of consciousness and how it is running and managing my everyday energy. I want to talk about this from sort of the lens of a self-care perspective, because I use all of these strategies and prompts and things that we're going to talk about as a way to check in with my energy, to release conditioning, and to recalibrate with, I almost said my home signal, but really, yeah, to recalibrate with my authentic essence, with my design, with my strategy, with my inner authority. All right, so let's dive in. This is not for beginners, I suppose. You have to have some semblance of understanding, or some basic understanding of the human design chart or body graph. And as you know, there are 9 energy centers, and they are either defined or not, right? They're colored in, they're closed, or they are open. So I want to talk about both defined centers and undefined centers, or closed centers and open centers, and how I work with both of those. Because unless you're a reflector, you have both defined and open centers, right? A reflector is someone that has all open centers. And so part of this discussion will apply to you. But for most of us, we're a blend of both defined and open centers, or closed and undefined centers. You get it? You know what I'm saying. So head to mybodygraph.com or whatever site you like to get your chart, to get a free chart, and check out your chart, check out your body graph, and see which of the 9 centers are colored in, closed, defined, and which centers are white or blank, undefined, and open, okay? The centers that, and this is all my perspective from what I've studied and what I've researched and how I've worked with human design. Again, not an expert. This is my opinion. These are my thoughts. These are my interpretations of this beautiful system. So your closed centers, the ones that are colored in and defined, these are like your pillars. These are like almost like a solid foundation that provides you stability and consistency. And so we, one of the words used in the human design system is fixed. With these colored, closed, defined energy centers, they are fixed. And so what this means is there is some level of consistency and stability there. They are almost like solidified wisdom, okay? When your soul designed this life and this blueprint, it gave you certain like solid foundations from which to lean upon. At least it gave most of us these. Again, if you're a reflector, you don't have any defined centers, but I digress. The closed centers are your pillars. They're your rock solid foundation. This is where you have stability and consistency in your energy and how your energy is managed and run. And so these centers that are defined, they offer us that stability and consistency. Now, they can become conditioned. Where we are really vulnerable to conditioning is those open centers, the blank ones, the white ones. But your defined centers can still become conditioned, right? And we're being bombarded with conditioning and programming all the time, and it's never ending. Because let's be honest, time and space are conditions, right? So as a soul embodied, we're constantly coming up against conditioning and programming. But the solidity of the defined centers, you know, conditioning tends to sort of slide off, if you will. There is a little bit of deprogramming and deconditioning involved when we move into adulthood, when we sort of leave the nest, because some of those defined centers adapt to parental programming and cultural conditioning and things. But all that being said, there is some conditioning, deconditioning work that can be done throughout our lives with our defined centers, but for the most part, they are solidified wisdom. Your soul came into this life with a specific way, a fixed way of wanting to manage and run energy in those centers. And so when it comes to this whole self-care idea of connecting with our energy body and our centers to release conditioning and programming and recalibrate, you want to ask your defined centers, get into meditation, get into your self-reflection space, or get into your inner communion practice, and ask those closed centers, what is my reliable and effective way of managing or dealing with yada yada yada, right? Each center manages different things. What is my consistent and authentic way of managing or dealing with this type of energy, blah, 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 right? What is my consistent, reliable, effective, authentic, unique? What is my innate wisdom around how to manage this energy, and how can I feel into that and reconnect to that, right? How can I release everybody else's opinions, thoughts, and ideas about how it should be done and just reconnect and recalibrate to my authentic way, my authentic system, my authentic strategy, right? That is how we can sort of practice self-care, personal energy work on our closed, defined centers, right? Getting into that that state of breath work and breathing through, and getting into that state of expansion, really breathing through and having that inner dialogue, having that self-inquiry, and just allowing those centers to actually communicate to us and recalibrate, right? Just by asking the question, we are opening up the space for that energy center to communicate with us, whether we feel this as thoughts or words or phrases or visions, or whether we just feel it from an emotional sort of standpoint of, this is what it feels like to be myself. This is what it feels like to just, to return to my authenticity or my design, right? Just allowing that energy or those defined energy centers to really communicate with you. So going in and asking, what is my reliable, consistent, fixed, effective way? What is my way? What is my soul's wisdom solidified within me in relationship to this energy center? All right. Now, the open centers are where we go to school. They are where we are open to learning and expansion and seeing things from different perspectives and points of view, not even just seeing them, but actually experiencing them, right? Our open centers are where we meld and connect with other energies. We literally meld and commingle because we're open, right? There isn't any definition or boundary there. So these are the centers that we empathize through and from, because we're just out there ready to like meld and co-create with everyone we come into contact with. And so for our open centers, these are the areas of soul where we wanted to experiment. Just as the defined closed centers are where soul was like, okay, we kind of got this on lockdown, and if we want to explore here and here and here, then we need some stability and some consistency in these areas to provide a solid foundation for this experience, this lifetime experience. So let's create some foundation here so that we feel safe and secure to explore here, right? So our open centers are where we go to school. It's where we explore. It's where we experiment. It's where we experience. And this is, these open centers are sort of like the aspects of ourselves that are perpetual students. And here's the thing though. Well, let me say this. Where we are open, our open centers, our undefined centers, we are vulnerable here, really vulnerable here to conditioning. Even though the fixed, defined, closed centers can take on conditioning, it's the open centers that we are really vulnerable to conditioning, right? Because depending on who we're with, depending on who we're connecting with, depending on where and who our energy is melding with, we're taking on that opinion, that thought, that idea, that viewpoint, that perspective of whatever it is we're enmeshed with. And so the thing to remember is, with our open centers, even though we're perpetual learners through these portals, We're not meant to land on any particular thought, idea, or system or strategy. We're not meant to attach to any fixed way of being. These centers are open so that we can remain fluid and flexible and experimental, right? So when it comes to our open centers and the self-care kind of personal energy work, we want to ask a different question. We want to ask, what is the neutral truth that underlies all things? Okay, and so let me kind of explain that for a minute. If you were a perpetual student and you went on all of these adventures and met with all of these different communities and people and walks of life and ways of being, there is likely, because we are all connected, because we are all of one energy, because we are all of source, right? All of these spiritual things or concepts that we say, we all came from the one. We are all aspects and facets of the one energy. And because of that, we are all connected. And so everything's connected. And so even in my experiments and my experiencing of all these different ways of being and seeing and experiencing the world, there are underlying neutral threads of truth that permeate and live beneath all of the different expressions, right? And so when it comes to our open centers, we're not meant to attach or fix to any one experience or any one system or any one concept or any one idea or thought or way of being and managing that energy. We're meant to remain open and fluid and flexible and experimental. However, as the perpetual student, as each of those open portals is, a learning, a classroom, a school, we will, over time, with our experiments and with our experimentation and our melding and connecting, we will find those sort of golden threads, those universal principles that underlie all of creation. And so when it comes to deconditioning, releasing, and recalibrating to our open centers, that's what our prompting is about. That's what our energy work is about. When everyone's thoughts, opinions, and ideas are non-existent, when it's just me, myself, and God, or me and source, or me and soul, what is the underlying neutral, unconditional truth of my beingness, or of this center, and how this energy runs? What does that feel like, right? And just breathing through and into that. When everyone else is out of the picture, it's just me, myself, and God, me and source, me and soul. What is the underlying neutral truth of this center in motion? That way we're releasing any fixed nature, and yet we're recalibrating to an open, unconditional state, an open, unconditional, flexible, invitation to experiment with, to keep learning and keep experimenting and keep melding while remaining unattached to any one way or idea or thought of being, you see? So these are the prompts I use to build relationship with my energy body, and to, create connection between my energy centers, and to sort of periodically, energetically cleanse myself of conditioning and attachment, and re-hone into myself where my stable, fixed centers are, where my closed centers are. Like, okay, when everyone else, like, all of it is, the beginning of every prompt is when it's just me, myself, and God. When it's just me and soul. And then for our for our closed centers, our defined centers, the ones that are colored in your chart, it's like, now that everybody's out of the picture, what is my authentic way of being in this area? With your undefined, open, white centers, it's what is the universal, neutral truth underlying this energy center? And that's how we release and recalibrate to our design, to our innate intelligence, to the wisdom our soul came here to actualize and experiment with, right? So those are my prompts that I use for myself, for my own energy work and periodic cleansing of my energy system. of my aura, really. If I'm working within these centers, it's automatically creating a holistic experience for the whole aura, right? And this is how I sort of shore up my boundaries, return to my authenticity, recalibrate to who it is I am as a unique individual, as an individuation, and release any attachment where I don't need it. Release any, need to have a fixed way of doing things where I don't need it. Remembering and returning to the remembrance that in certain areas of my life, I'm here to be experimental, not consistent, right? And I think that's such a beautiful thing to really remember and connect to, because in so many areas we're conditioned to be consistent, and we're conditioned to have like a strategy and something that we like stick to. And let me just say that there are certain areas of your life where you are meant to take a more experimental approach. You are meant to be more open and fluid. You are meant to sample all of these different things and not really land on any one, but take the wisdom of all of it in, so that it builds this beautiful neutral wisdom that serves a multitude of things, not just one aspect or idea or thought, right? So I give you permission to be fixed where you are meant to be fixed, to be consistent where you are meant to be consistent, and to be open and unattached where you are meant to be open and unattached. And I hope that these prompts are helpful to you. Take them into your self-reflection time, your inner communion time, and let me know how communing with your energy body in this way serves you.